All right. Well, if you're thirsty and you're looking for some good Bible talk and good discussion, and you love Star Wars, present company, I'm going to include all three of us. April
Yeah,
is now a Star
especially
Wars
April.
fan.
She loves it.
She's like, I love you. And he goes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. For at least the next couple hours, you're a Star Wars fan. So
You're welcome here,
welcome.
even if you don't love Star Wars.
Mm, I don't think
Kind
so.
of.
We don't serve their
Kind.
kind here, is what I
We
remember.
we need every view we can get.
Oh, well. Thumbs down. There's still interactions. So
Well, almost everybody loves Star Wars of some form, so we're probably
yeah,
good to go.
yeah, you can love it or love to hate it. Just join us. Come to the cantina. And tonight we're talking about modesty. So come modest. Because there's Star Wars can invoke some immodesty. So come modest, and let's talk about what God has to say about modesty and what God has to say about um, what presents value in a person. I think our society says, "Hey, present your value by showing off what you have." To everybody. Um, have people covet over what they might not have, and just flaunt your quote unquote value. And then, of course, the world makes you unvaluable by doing that. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll probably dovetail. April, no doves on the thumbnail. We'll dovetail
I got it.
off of some other topics. So
No one's gonna get that, but us who had that private conversation.
I love inside jokes. Hope to be part of one someday.
All right.
My
Yeah.
bad.
So today we just really want to talk about what modesty is. It typically is, I think, misunderstood because we think modesty means someone who is going to dress to cover up their nakedness, and that is a virtue in Scripture, obviously, but that's connected, I would argue, to like Leviticus 18, for instance, where nakedness in Scripture is a synecdoche because it's a part of the sexual act. It wouldn't function as a synecdoche if it wasn't. So it would really make no sense as a synecdoche, and yet I really think it is a synecdoche in terms of that it's a part for the whole. And so uncovering someone's nakedness is the beginning of the sexual act, or at least it's a part of it, and therefore it kind of represents the whole thing. And so, should
Even
you in some way reveal your nakedness, and I'd say, well, only to your marital spouse, right?
I guess before you move on, just like as a, if people want to push back on that, just practically speaking, undressing is a precursor to the sexual act, and it has to be a precursor.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the sexual act can't be performed. So it is a part of it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, so absolutely, I mean, it has to be, right. It's just logical necessity. But also, you see someone naked, and what does it invoke in you? If you're looking at them in a sexual way, it invokes, you want to have sex with that person, or you're thinking of it in some way, or it's an attraction that's of a sexual nature or whatever. And so that's usually what we mean by modesty, and then we extend it out to really talking about promiscuity in one's attitude, to where the man or woman conveys that they're making themselves available, and so sexually available to someone else. So you can be immodest in the modern sense that we're using it, by just the way you talk to the opposite sex, by touching the opposite sex, and whatever. You can be immodest in that you're communicating that you are sexually available to someone that in fact you shouldn't. They're either married, or you're married, or they're not your spouse. But I do want to say that that's not actually what modesty is in the New Testament. That's something different. Those are two different issues. And so when we use the word modesty, we're referring to that issue, and because of that, we completely ignore the actual instructions about modesty that appear a few times in the New Testament. The bigger passages are directly to women, but they would also apply to men. And it's, one is in 1 Timothy 2 and the other is in 1 Peter 3. I don't know if you guys want me to read those or if you have anything to say on what I said already. Or
I guess I'll add, there's Paul alludes to this, and he doesn't attach this to modesty, but he talks about like different types of glories, right? Like animals have a certain glory, stars have a certain glory.
Yeah.
And there's this idea of like glory is beauty, right? And of
Yeah.
course, like for God, beauty is never like an inanimate personality trait. God's beauty is always manifested in some kind of action. So like the glory of Christ is his manifest love in the, crucifixion or whatever. So like a glory for either a man or a woman, and it shows their beauty. And then of course that has to be connected to God, because only things that God does are beautiful ultimately. So people confuse this idea of beauty or glory. Like I'm going to show my glory just haphazardly or willy-nilly, or there's only like one type of glory, and that is like the nakedness, right? And if that's the only type of beauty I have, I got to show it or I'm not valuable, right? So like there isn't really this idea that even glory can be veiled, or veiled in the sense that your beauty is manifested by what you do, not necessarily manifested by like your outward. And this is what Paul talks about, right? What you're probably about to read. But like the glory is not what is outwardly or what is shown off, but it's the veiled glory. It's what's in you that doesn't stay in you, that actually permeates the world and it manifests itself in action.
Well, and I think showing off beauty is probably where the two issues connect, right? That's probably where they come together, because the one is you're showing your beauty, and obviously, if you're showing beauty in your nakedness, it means you're healthy. You're showing off your health and the glory of your health or whatever, which ultimately again should be for your spouse only, in any sort of sexual way. But then the New Testament wants to also apply that to not just the nakedness or whatever, but it actually wants to apply it with showing off your beauty in terms of your wealth, and adorning yourself in terms of wealth and communicating that you're wealthy to people. And this is something that in America, I don't ever hear anything about this, because everyone's wearing super rich suits and super rich jewelry and super rich watches, and everything's like, the women are, I've got the fanciest clothes, and they're, oh, aren't they expensive, and oh, that's an upper class person type thing or whatever. And these passages are actually telling you not that you should also have a godly mind, but that you actually should actually dress that way. And we typically, let me read it, and then I'll talk about why I think we fudge on these passages so much. So in first of all, we'll just start in 1 Timothy chapter 2. He's instructing the men and whatnot. It says that in verse 8, I desire then that in every place the men should pray, lifting holy hands without anger or quarreling. Likewise, also that women should adorn themselves in a respectable apparel, with modesty and self-control. And you might think, oh, well, that sounds almost sexual, but actually he's going to give you the contrast. Not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly clothing, but with what is proper for women who profess godliness with good works. And then that's where he goes on to say, let women learn in quietness and all that sort of thing. And he doesn't give them authority and all that. And so notice that here, when he's talking about modesty then and having self-control, it's having self-control to not convey to someone that you're a higher class than they are, that you actually have all these riches, that you're dressing in a way that basically, like, you know, you've got this guy who's starving next to you and you're wearing like gold jewelry. Like that is creating more divisions in the church, and it conveys, I think what it does is Paul's warning people to not think of yourself this way, that somehow you're better than other people, because that's ultimately what I think riches do. There's a reason why you have a bunch of people in suits judging the people who aren't. It's not a matter that they just like the suit. It's perfectly fine to wear a suit, but the issue becomes whether or not, like, the suit is, you know, a $15,000 Armani or something, and you've got, like, you know, a $50,000 Rolex on your wrist and all that sort of thing, conveying that somehow you're of a different class and quality than the rest of the church and whatnot. And women in particular, men can do this as well. Obviously, men do this. But women in particular find, I think, a lot of status. Like, I think a lot of men can be rich and not really put themselves in a different class and not be as judgmental. I do think there are men who are judgmental and do that. But for the most part, I think it's more of a woman's problem, to where women want to be seen as higher class. I think it might be linked to the fact that they want to be, they want to feel rich, so that it gives a sense of security, because obviously women are attracted to riches, whereas men don't give a rip if a woman is rich or poor. It doesn't matter. He'll be attracted to her anyway. And so there's an attraction to riches that women have that men don't have.
I think men, though, they compete with it, because even like, you know, Emmanuel worked in retail for a long time, and it's like when he was the director of Rolex, it was like any like guys who are coming in and buying Rolexes, it's like, I need to have the next best thing. I need to be on this list because this is a, you know, an exclusive thing, and I need to get this. I need to have it before everyone else. It's like a competition.
Sorry, let me clarify. Masculine men, not effeminate men.
Even masculine men do this with vehicles, or, you know, I need to have the best vehicle, and mine needs to be better than yours, or my house needs to be better than yours.
I see. I still think that's all effeminate. If you look at like the most masculine man who's like out logging and, you know, in the woods, he wants a good truck to use for work. Like, the truck isn't like something that's, you know, battling his neighbor. I got a better truck than you or whatever. He's looking to use it for masculine endeavors. He wants to off-road with it, you know, all that sort of thing. That's different than, I think, what you have is this effeminacy created in men, to where they've started in our culture to battle with one another in the way that women battle with one another. Because women are, look at the way women in the Bible are with just even children, right? Children are the beginning of women's wealth, and it puts them in a higher status in the Bible. And so
I think that's still true. I think that's still true in like Reformed context, where it's like, I have 5 kids. Well, I have this many kids. It's like,
in our context,
Here's maybe the dovetail, but like, Brian, you're talking about like the masculine men doing one thing, and like the effeminate men looking for something similar, but they don't have any skills that they can go out and off-road or cut down trees. So they don't have any skills. But ultimately, like, what are men after, and what are they competing for? They're competing for respect. So like the masculine man who actually has skills that he can go out and shoot or hunt or whatever, he's going to try to show his glory and the respect that he garners from other men, and that men can like count on him. He wants to be like the guy that people go to for help, or whatever. That's how he's going to find value and find glory, right? The effeminate man,
he's the oak, right? He's not looking for the next latest item, because he in fact doesn't need it, unless he needs it for something to be the oak, you know.
Well, Ray Gustin gets into this when he's like talking about the pagans and how they love honor, right? They'll like,
Yeah.
he brings up the Roman general when they're at war with Carthage, who's taken prisoner, and then he has to go do something in Rome, and he tells his captors like, "Hey, I got to go do this thing, but I'll come back," right? And he goes and does it, and then he comes back, right? And then he's tortured to death and he dies. And it's those right, because like in their mind that for the man that's beauty and honor, that's beauty to them, that's glory,
right.
that's
You keep your word.
modest. You keep your word, but then Augustine's like, for what? Like he ends up dying. Like what did he keep? He kept nothing. Yeah, the feminine has got nothing else other than suits, cars.
Yeah.
Children are, let's say, hey, children are easy.
Yeah.
Children are easy. Men's got to do one thing for quite a while before he's got to insert himself.
Well, now he's got Pokemon cards. It's like it's getting worse in our culture for what men compete with one another about.
Sure.
Because it's just, again, it's this effeminate thing. But I do think it's the men competing with men in an effeminate way rather than like, how did men used to compete? Well, they used to fight. Whoever was strongest, then that person won. It wasn't like, well, whoever has the Rolex or whatever. So now you can have this really weak man has all this really nice stuff, and this really strong guy who has nothing. And we look at the guy with the Rolex and everything as somehow accomplished in our culture. I just think that we're very effeminate in the way. So I would never look at our culture and be like, oh, here's the standard of what men are like and what women are like. I think men are distorted in our culture. And that's why I say that I think if you look in history, most men, yes, kings are doing that because I think kings are weak men, a lot of them. That they're given their privileges and inheritance and whatnot. But most men in the culture are they're masculine, they're hardworking, they're not battling with one another at who has a better class. Whereas women tend to care throughout history about that. They care about whether their husband is, rich and whether he's powerful and whether he's in, the in group and all that sort of thing. That's what women tend to care about. I'm not saying all women, obviously, but that's what pagan women tend to care about. Paul is saying, look, if you have a profession of godliness, what's proper for women, what's fitting for women is that you adorn yourself, you beautify yourself with what Drake was talking about, with good works. That's how you do it. And then I want to go to 1 Peter real quick, because Peter says something that I think, again, is misunderstood because of the translation. So likewise, wives, this is 1 Peter 3. Be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Do not let now this says your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry or the clothing you wear. It's almost identical to what Paul says. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. Now, when it says in verse 3, do not let your adorning be external, literally the Greek is let it not be, or let there not be, one who is external. So it's not even talking about, oh, just don't, there's all these words added, like don't let your adorning merely be external. It's like, that's not what it says. It literally says, don't be external. Don't let someone be an external person who's focused on the externalities, is the idea. But rather, in contrast, what is it? Let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. So the very point is that the external person cares about the braiding of the hair, putting on gold jewelry, and putting on fancy clothes. But by the way, braiding hair is not equivalent to brushing your hair. Braiding of the hair is something that royalty tended to do. It tended to take a long time for women because they had longer hair. and you tended to be rich if you had time for someone to braid your hair. You tended to have
Watch
slaves
Downton
and-
Abbey.
yeah. It tended to take a long. So it's not talking about don't brush your hair or don't wear something nice or something. It's talking about being concerned about conveying to people that you're in a higher class than they are. And you're communicating this through your dress. And so what you want to do instead is, and this is why humility, Paul talks about how, it's better that you are, that you need to take on modesty and humility, because humility is you actually have a right view of yourself. You don't think that you're better than other people. And so you're not trying to convey that in your dress. And so it really doesn't have to do with the way you dress as much as the reason why you dress that way. And unfortunately, I really think that there are a lot of women in church, and again, some effeminate men in church, who they dress in such a way to where they think they're better than other people in terms of they think they're pleasing God more. They think God is more pleased with you beautifying yourself with riches and adorning yourself externally and all that sort of thing. When these passages are very clear that God cares about your inward person, and it doesn't seem that he cares really at all whether you dress like you're rich or not. Obviously, it's not talking about be riddled with diseases and have dirt on you constantly or whatever. Although I don't know if he really would care if that's where you came from. But the point is that he's not pleased with you adorning yourself with riches. In fact, it seems like he would be more displeased if you do it for the wrong reason.
Yes, that's the question that people are going to ask is, and maybe the question that we should address is, we live in, the United States, which is a very wealthy country compared to the rest of the world. So all of us, by global standards, are wearing costly clothing, right? That is, compared to someone who lives in a third world country or wherever else. So
Right.
really, it's less about, okay, there's some kind of spiritual cutoff for my dress needs to cost less than $20 to be modest or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
and more just about, why are you wearing the things that you're wearing, and what is your attitude towards others within the body of Christ, and are you trying to convey that I'm somehow better than you are with your attire, versus, hey, maybe you own a Rolex and you wear a Rolex, but it's not something that you think makes you better than someone.
Well, it's interesting. Paul will admonish the Corinthians about them putting over one another certain gifts and whatnot. And Paul says, "Did you not receive everything you have from me? Like, did you not receive salvation from the gospel that I gave you? Like, what do you have that you actually garnered yourself?"
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's nothing, right? And of course, like, if you understand Paul's point, is if he's talking about the greatest thing, which is salvation, then anything below that also is not anything you have garnered yourself. It's all given to you. So as far as the world is concerned, they're going to say, yeah, you've earned it. You're better than these people, and live that way. But Paul's like, look, salvation at the top, it's been given to you. So is everything else. You're in the same class as everybody else. So when you're with your brother who is of a lower worldly class, your higher whatever, your higher status, your higher wealth, your higher clothes, it's all in the effect to take care of the ones that are quote unquote lower, because they've received the same salvation, which is higher than what you've received in the worldly sense, which also God gave you to take care of his people.
Yeah.
So if you're in like, Luke writing to the guy probably in the Roman government who probably has to wear nice clothing to go to these different events and be diplomatic and like, yeah, okay, that's the world that God has put him in. It's fine that he's wearing nice clothing. But
Yeah.
Luke's point is like, why are you wearing that nice clothing? To show that you're higher than everybody else? You have this prominent position in government and everyone bow to me and I'm in charge? No, it's how can I protect the church? How can I, for those who are in the same class as me, salvifically, which is higher than my position in the government, how can I procure this and actually be modest, even while I'm wearing, purple and all that stuff, and eating nice meat from the market with all these other royal people or whatever? Well, it's because I have the church in mind, and that's how you can be modest, even in the midst of like riches around you.
Yeah. I think one of the qualities that Christ describes the Pharisees as is they love to wear fine robes and lengthen their tassels, and they love this external honor that they get from what they wear. Because they're conveying, I'm better than you. I'm in a different class than you are. I'm higher than you are. And what I find interesting is that I don't know how many, most rich people I've ever known, they don't actually dress fancy at all. They actually wear stuff like this. They wear, t-shirts, they wear collared shirts. They're not wearing suits everywhere. The people who do it are the wannabes. Usually it's the wannabes who are all decked out because they're trying to convey something about themselves. And so again, I'm not talking about like if you go to some formal thing, everybody expects you to wear a particular thing or whatever, and all that sort of thing. I mean, like when you go out on the town, when you go somewhere, especially if you're going to church or whatever, like you don't have to wear those things. And most people who have lots of money don't. It's the people who want to be rich, who want to be viewed as upper class, who want to be viewed as kind of the elite. Those are the people who tend to dress like that. And I find it fascinating. A lot of pastors do that because they want to be viewed that way. And we see this anywhere from the mega church. We see it in the Reformed church. We see it everywhere. But what I find interesting is that, when you read the early church, something like Nicaea that had instructions for the clergy that they couldn't actually wear nice clothing because it was immodest.
Yeah.
And they were to be examples to the flock. How far we have come from that day when everybody understood that's immodest and you're to be a symbol of modesty for the flock because you're shepherds. And so you're not to convey that you're better than people through your dress. And then I look at all these pastors who are doing exactly that and just think, I think that we've just completely lost what God cares about. Because there's this overreaction against Gnosticism, and that now it's going to be all about the physical. So now we're becoming materialists, and it's like how about we just become biblical and we have an emphasis on the spiritual with an understanding that the physical will be redeemed one day. That's the Bible.
Well, yeah, and Paul even furthers modesty. I mean, because there is like the adorning aspect, but Paul even says like, I have the freedom to do many things, right? I have the freedom to take money from you. I have the freedom to go drink wine if I wanted to. I can go here, there.
I can sit here and eat meat in front of you all day.
I can eat meat. That's right. Weaker brother who just came out of paganism, whatever. I have the freedom to eat meat right in front of your face.
Yeah.
But what does he say, right? I don't do. There's like he restricts himself really to like he doesn't get married. Obviously, he has freedom to do that, but he doesn't for the sake of what? And we could just frame this in the modesty argument, for the sake of modesty, to show that freedom and privilege is not something that you just have to partake in if it doesn't love the flock, if it doesn't grow, if it doesn't exhort, lift up the body. You don't do it, because that's what modesty is all about, and that's what beauty is all about. Beauty is modesty, and it is using it in its appropriate time and appropriate sense.
I don't know if this has a place in this conversation or not, but just as, I guess, from a woman's perspective and the struggle or the fine line that we walk as women, is I do think it's really important for women to not, for lack of a better term, let yourself go and not try for your husband, because I feel like we have this kind of culture now where it's like, you get married and then you're just kind of like, well, he's already stuck with me. And so then there's no, do you know what I mean? Like there's no
Yeah,
effort
right.
for your outward appearance. And
That
again,
really
I
is
don't
true
mean that in like,
narcissism.
that's not, it's not that you're like, you should be modest in how you're dressing in relation to your heart towards other people in the church. But I
Yeah,
do think for women, like a lot of women um end up not adorning themselves with, gold and costly things. In our generation, it's very much like, well, I'm just going to wear sweatpants and a t-shirt all day, and my husband's going to come home and I'm just going to look like a mess. And, that's fine because I'm spiritual. I don't care about that. And I think that there's a pitfall there as well for women.
well, I think a lot of women in our culture that it's there's a point where ultimate luxury, ultimate conveying that you have everything you need, is a lot of that has to do with gaining weight, like a lot of weight, because frankly, throughout ancient culture, only if you gained weight, you were rich. If you listen to his song, Tevia's song and Fiddler on the Roof, he's desiring that his wife has a proper double chin because he wants to be a rich man. That's the whole point of that. And I think that obviously a lot of it's laziness, but again, laziness from what? Because you can afford it. It does convey that sort of thing. So I do almost think that it's kind of connected. It's sort of like, I'm so rich, I don't even need to care.
Yeah.
I literally have everything. My husband's never going to leave me. And it's like, I try to tell people all the time, it's like, look, just because you don't believe in divorce and remarriage, that doesn't mean people aren't going to sin and divorce you and remarry. Like it's still going to happen. Like people sin a lot all the time. So just because you hold a belief doesn't mean that that's somehow going to stop you. It will help you if you genuinely believe it. But I can see people getting so frustrated and so just apathetic to where they go out and sin and they're going to divorce and remarry. So I would never rely on the whole thing where, well, I got him. It's like,
It's also
well,
just kind of like a selfishness though, because it's like, well, I'm
yeah,
more comfortable like this, and so I'm concerned about the way that my dress makes me feel, and I don't actually care about how it makes my husband feel
yeah.
because it's good for me.
Well,
And
this connects
I
also
think we
to
have
the
to fight against that a little bit.
this connects to the makeup idea as well, though, because it's sort of like most women will wear like no makeup at home, but then when they go out, they'll wear makeup because obviously they're being judged, but also I think because they're getting attention from it. Um, Ultimately, like if you look at makeup, most makeup mimics, the coloration of a woman's skin when she's in the
Mm.
sexual act or aroused or whatever. That's why it's attractive to men. Um, who should she primarily be wearing that for? At home for her husband. Why would she wear it out anywhere? No, obviously her husband wants her to look nice. That's fine, but ultimately we have it flipped to where she wears it when she goes out, but not when she's in. And it's sort of like, well, again, who are you? Who are you showing your beauty to? That to me is almost the equivalent of like you're going out naked and then you're fully clothed when you're in the house. It's like it doesn't make any
I
sense.
don't know that you're gonna see me on the podcast without makeup, but
Well, it's similar to like what Christ says about the Pharisees. Like they go and say lengthy prayers in front of everyone.
Yeah,
That's their makeup, right?
mhm.
But they're not praying in private.
right. They
They're
don't
not
go in
doing any of
the
that stuff.
closet and pray. Yeah,
Yeah. So like take that modesty and go to your house, and husbands too.
Mhm.
Like husbands will show their masculinity to other women, not their wives.
yeah,
They'll try to impress other women. So like at work or whatever, they'll try to be that reliant oak somewhere else,
Yeah.
and not at home. Completely immodest.
You ever seen the movie Jingle All the Way?
Yeah.
So his neighbor, so his neighbor basically is like the perfect man for all the ladies in the neighborhood. He's like fixing
It's like
everything
comedian,
and
right?
baking cookies. Phil Hartman, yeah.
Phil Hartman, yeah.
And he's baking cookies and like, oh, you're just so great. But he is divorced. So obviously he wasn't the perfect man. It was just for everybody else. And this is the problem with us, is that we are external people. We have literally become what we are commanded in Peter and Timothy to not become. We become external people. That's what Americans are. We are people of the mask. And so we either, whether it be riches or whether it be, how great we are or whatever it may be, we're no longer these hidden people that we're supposed to be, that are showing glory in our good works and all of that. We're showing glory in the external stuff. And I understand why the world does it, because the world's passing away. That's the only glory they have, is stuff that passes away. But that's not us. We're the sons and daughters of God. So our glory is not passing away. And that's the glory we need to actually show to everyone. Not the blend with the world and say, oh, well, the world's doing it, so I guess I'll do it because other people in the church are doing it. And it's like, well, someone's got to get in there and stop it.
Yeah, and the church probably doesn't do a good job in teaching laymen how to handle like the world's goods in a modest way. So right, so the world's going to teach you how to use it immodestly. I mean, that's just like that's baked into the whole system.
Yeah.
But like it's not taught very often. How do I handle these things in like marriage, money, clothing, dreams and goals, all that stuff. How do I handle these things modestly and actually be beautiful?
Well, and you just touched on it, Drake. I just want to make it real clear. This isn't just about clothing. It could be about your house.
Yeah.
It could be about your cars. It could be about whatever, the people you hang around, that you'll only hang around these type of people or whatever. It could be about the fact that the judgmentalism that exists on external things. That's really, like, if you have people who are judgmental about external things, you've got immodest people. You've got people who think that worth is somehow in externals. And that's the problem. And we've seen that a lot in churches. Now, again, there's nothing wrong. I just want to make it real clear. There's nothing wrong about wearing clothing that's appropriate to whatever event you're going to, if everyone's wearing that, or it's required for your job, or there's nothing wrong with April wearing makeup, because obviously all the women are going to judge her if she's not, or something. The men won't care. Because obviously, makeup enhances women's beauty, doesn't give them
it's also
beauty.
partly for women, it's also partly a comfort thing for women.
Sure.
If you know, oh, a lot of people are going to be looking at you, and you're like, I'm going to hide all my imperfections, right?
Yeah, if you like to wear a hockey mask, you could do that.
That great. Then I don't have to actually do the makeup. That would be awesome.
No, but so in other words, it's not wrong to wear clothing. What is clothing? Clothing is clothing. You're free to do whatever. The issue is the attitude, the reason why, because if you look down deep, a lot of people are doing it to impress other people with externals, or even to impress themselves.
Yeah, I'll never. Well, I'm obviously haven't forgot because I'm telling the story. But I was working my job, and I was working on a Sunday morning, and I finished early enough to be able to drive to church and be a part of the liturgy, right? So, but I didn't have time to change that.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So I'm standing there in half my uniform or whatever.
He was flying the pulpit.
Yeah. And somebody said an offhanded joke, which was kind of a joke, but I think they're also serious, because typically when I'm dressed normally, it's not dressed up. It's kind of,
right.
I'll blend in. You won't notice me.
Right.
And they made the offhanded comment like, "Wow, you dress nicer for your job than you do for church." And I remember thinking like, man, there's a reason I dress like this for my job, because
You're like, this is a
externally,
uniform. I'm required to wear this.
well, not
Yeah.
only that, but there is this external comfort like it gives people, that they assume my skills are up to snuff, that they'll be okay, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I was like,
Like,
there's a
yeah,
problem.
you
right
don't
there.
want your pilot wearing sweatpants. He like shows up in sweatpants. You're like, I don't know. Like, is he
But at the
prepared
same
for
time,
today?
it's a wrong assumption by the
It's a
world.
I
wrong
know, but I'm
assumption.
saying that that's what I would think if like a pilot showed
Right.
up. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying if a pilot showed up in sweatpants and a tattered t-shirt, I would be like, did he like have a hard night last night, or is
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
No, I agree. We would think that because we're wrong, though, because ultimately the guy who can fly the plane the best might actually decide to wear sweatpants because he's actually not really that uptight about it. He knows how to fly the plane. The guy who doesn't know how to fly the plane, and this is in a hypothetical scenario to where your company would actually allow you to wear what you want. The guy who doesn't know how to fly the plane, he's probably getting spick and span because he wants to look his best because he's super nervous about flying
because
that
he's
plane.
incompetent?
Yeah, I mean,
I've seen
ultimately,
it. I've seen
well,
it.
and bring it over to the church. We've seen this in the church. People don't have competence in the Bible, so what do? They dress up. They make themselves elite. They make themselves men that worldly men want to follow because they can't be the men that godly men would want to follow. And this is the problem in the church, is that the guy who's wearing sweatpants might actually be more competent and actually might be more godly. And in fact, according to church history, he is more godly if he's trying to dress modestly for the sake of the brethren because he loves them. And Drake, I love the fact that you connected to the ultimate thing, which is this is not a minor issue. This is connected to whether you love the brethren or not. This is connected to whether you love God or not. It's not some secondary issue that, oh, well, I'm going to dress how I want because I think God likes it when I respect him with my dress or whatever. And it's like, where does God say he ever likes a particular way that you dress? That's never a thing. It's clear in scripture that he cares about what your heart is like, what your mind is like, what you're thinking about, whether you're abiding in Christ, whether you're loving the poor in the community. That's what he cares about.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I have permission to wear sweatpants on Sunday. No.
Well, you can imagine a judgmental, someone who's immodest will, in fact, let's say we all wear sweatpants from now on, will look at that and judge the church as being, oh man, that's not being used by God. That's lesser than what God would want.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you can take this this understanding and just butcher it, right? You can say, well, then I'm going to wear raggy, everything's gonna have holes in it. I'm gonna just show up dirty because that means I'm good. Then if I just show up dirty,
You're
If
also
everything's
drawing
got holes
attention
in
to
it.
yourself. You're also
Yeah.
drawing attention to yourself that way. Like if you're doing it to, like if there's a gala, and we had people in our church
tax the
come to a
rich,
gala,
right? On your
then
dress.
and then you show up, in sweatpants because you're trying to
Yeah.
make a statement. Like you are trying to get attention for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the idea is that you want to blend in with your people.
Yeah.
So if everybody was wearing suits,
Wear a suit.
now I'd be like, hey, are you guys like inviting to the poor? But let's say you live in a really rich area, there's no poor, everybody's in a suit, then fine, you should wear a suit. You probably shouldn't wear a t-shirt then because now you look like you're saying, hey, everybody, look at me. You're trying to not make yourself somehow have people think that you're unique and better than the rest of the group. That's kind of the idea.
But I'll tell you, like, if you're, for a pastor, if you're in a church that is wearing all suits, your goal is to, if someone were to come in unknowingly without a suit, right, because they're visiting, everyone would treat them as if they had a suit on themselves.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. That's what you're after, because if they all of a sudden are, well, you don't belong here, your church is in trouble. Like
Yeah,
big
we have
time.
eternal robes of righteousness. Like that's how we should be looking at one another, regardless of what
Yeah.
moth and rust destroy.
Right. And I'll even say on the flip side, I mean, James' admonition is obviously for the rich man coming in and the poor man, and giving obviously more treatment to the rich. But if you have a poor church and you have a well-off guy in a suit come in, you don't treat him weird either.
Right.
Right. He's, and he shouldn't be asking for better treatment, obviously, but like, don't put him in a corner because he's one of those rich guys. Because again, if it's a Christian, he's also going to understand James's admonition and say, I have nothing, right? I'm a sinner just like you. Without Christ, I'm dead. All my riches will go away. These mean nothing. This means nothing.
I do think if these passages were better understood, you probably wouldn't have the guy walk in with a suit. I think the reason why you do is because these are taught as though it's about women being promiscuous,
Sure,
and dressing in a promiscuous way. And again, that's why we kind of started up this podcast that way, because ultimately, like, that is connected. It is a type of showing off your beauty, but that's a whole another thing, to where, as we talked about before, you're trying to convey that you're available. I do want to follow up and say that I do think men can also do this in a promiscuous way, like women do, by flaunting their riches. So whereas women might flaunt their bodies in some way, men can do that too if they're like physically fit, but more, it's going to be more in terms of they flaunt their riches. And so that they can also be immodest in that way, sexually speaking or whatever. But
Yeah, women, I mean, I won't speak for all women everywhere, but women are not triggered by the physical in the same way as men are.
right.
So, it's a little different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're impressed with the status, and that tells men, oh, I gotta impress people with my status. And the Bible's like, no, impress people with your good works and your godliness and all of that.
I think, well, I think if we understand this principle, we won't hear things like, I've met people who on the outward are really cleaned up and on the inside are dirty, but I've never met somebody who's dirty on the outside who's clean on the inside. I think
I've never
like,
met Jesus.
Yeah, statements like that really make no sense unless you're going to say, Brian, you and I were talking about this earlier. Unless you're going to say, like, of course, if I walk into somebody's house and they have heroin needles on the floor,
right,
or like a brothel going on, okay, yeah, all right,
yeah,
you got a point. But if we're talking about someone who has even, like, whatever, taken a vow of poverty for whatever reason, or a church in a very poor area in a third world country where running water is a luxury, bathing doesn't happen all the time. Yeah, that has no bearing on what's going on inside of them. In fact, how you'll know what's going on inside of them is, is that body actually taking care of one another, and are they thriving in that way? That's where you'll see the what is actually shining forth, that they actually are rich. Those are the richest people, in that land right there.
Richest people in Walnut Grove.
That's right.
Yeah, I've seen in like the Reformed Church, and prior to the split, I've seen people do this mostly like explicitly with other people's kids.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, her hair is a little bit crazy right now. I'm like, yeah, she has curls. Or like, her outfit doesn't match. Yeah, because she picked it out. It's okay.
Can you imagine like growing up in the wilderness or in like hut homes that have like dirt floors, and someone complaining that your kids have like dirt on them? Like, let me go out on a limb here and say most godly people throughout churches, 99.99% of them have been dirtier and smellier to a level that most modern Americans would not find acceptable.
Yeah.
I have no problem saying that. Knowing the hygiene of most people, not only in the history of the world, but in our world, like in third world countries, it is not. It's just this sort of American elitism that. And here's the problem: it's a moralizing of preferences. So this is what people do. This is what a lot of cult leaders do. Actually, they take their preferences and they attach some moral principle to it. And now, really, everybody should do it. And if you don't, I'm going to judge you for not doing what I think is the best. And that's where you get cults. And that's what's really happening is you've got people who are moralizing their preferences. Obviously in America, we prefer not to be as smelly, dirty. We prefer, like most cultures, they understand smell as well, but they don't clean themselves to be less smelly. They dump a load of perfume, they burn incense, they do all this stuff to cover the smell. We prefer to actually, be clean in order to not smell. But it really is a cultural preference, and we were tying it to morality when it's really not a moral issue. If it was a moral issue, it should be in the law of God. And I don't mean like the ceremonial laws. It should be in the 10 Commandments, and it should be for all time. It should be a part of the love of God, the love of neighbor, and anyone who's dirty then should be in sin. That would pretty much be almost everyone in the Bible, including Jesus. And that's a problem. That's where it's a problem.
But yeah, and even with like unity's sake, in the first century, you have Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians. The Jewish Christians are probably very versed in ritual washings, like they're cleaner.
Yeah, cleaner, not clean.
Right, they're cleaner. Like they're going to be in water a lot more, and
yeah.
There, you can see the problem here. Like, well, you guys are like, we can't hang out with you because you guys don't even wash your hands before you eat.
Yeah.
We're not going to eat.
That's literally what the Pharisees say of the disciples.
That's literally what happens.
So and Jesus is saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's immoral of you, disciples. Go wash your hands."
Right. Yeah. So if the Jews and Gentiles can live together, I think Gentiles and because a lot of us don't have a big Jewish presence in our church. Gentiles and Gentiles could probably figure this out.
Well, there's a lot of Gentiles today in America that want to be Jewish again.
That's true. Yeah, make the church Jewish again. Make the church the Tanakh again.
Make it Israel Jewish again.
Make Israel Jewish. Yeah, there you go. Make Israel Jewish again. Yeah. All right.
We make a lot of ungodly assumptions about people when we look at the external things, whether that's your clothes or your kids. And like my example of the pilot, like, yeah, it's not good if he showed up in sweatpants that I'm like, I don't know if he can fly the plane. We all do this, and we all need to check ourselves, particularly in the context of the church, because I mean, I've seen it get really out of hand where it is like you're a bad parent because this is how your kids look, or you're this or you're this, or you're not qualified to be a pastor because your house is dirty, or whatever. It's like all judging on externals, and it's really ungodly and unloving.
Well, in the meantime, the internals, so even though they would argue, oh, we've got this balance, they don't have a balance. The internals are thrown out. They're not important. What's really important is this push toward the material and the external. And so I don't care if your kids are committing adultery and sexual immorality and they're hitting girls and all that. So that's no problem. But
they look nice on Sunday.
Woe to you if your kids are not shiny and clean, with their hair to the side or whatever, like alfalfa. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, if you want to support us, very cleanly and elegantly, hit the like button. Make sure you wash your hands before you do it. Subscribe, join the Patreon, become a pilot with us in the Rebel Alliance. You have to wear a uniform. It's got to be clean too. You got to wash it. But yeah, no. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys in another episode. Thanks. I'm just gonna preemptively say thanks for liking and subscribing. So we'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
By Morgoth. I am your only future. But they don't like they're bred for war. So like Saruman like literally grows them in his under
In like his vat.
in his
orc
vats,
vat.
right? And he like gives a sword to him and they go fight. That's like, and Uruk-hai are like better than the original orc or whatever because they can be in the daylight.
The reason why I like Moby Dick so much is, to me, there's a parallel with Genesis. So it's actually history. It's history that Melville he's interviewed. This actually occurred to a bunch of whalers.
Yeah.
And the survivors he interviewed.
Yeah.
And it became this book. But notice how he's writing this history. It's not, here's all the facts that happened. All right, the end. He's writing it because he wants to put meaning and a message to what has occurred.